Airlines Confidential with Scott McCartney is made possible with support from Pratt & Whitney, committed to working smarter, cleaner, and greener today for a more sustainable tomorrow. PrattWhitney.com. Infinity Flight, the leader in Cadet Academy flight training programs. InfinityFlight.com. Ontario International Airport in Southern California. SoCal So Easy. And by Cirium, the world's most trusted source of aviation analytics. Cirium.com. We also welcome your business's support. Contact us at airlinesconfidential.com.
Welcome to Airlines Confidential Halloween edition. I'm Scott McCartney and I'm solo this week. Spooky, I know. Actually, I've got two significant interviews to bring to you this week, so we're going to focus on that. First, I'll speak with Andrew Watterson, the Chief Operating Officer and number 2 executive at Southwest Airlines, about all the changes that have happened and that are coming up, including where things stand with activist investor Elliott Management. Second, I'll talk with Jay Sorensen, president of IdeaWorks, about where the industry stands with ancillary revenue, which is such a key part of the airline world now. No tricks, just treats. I think you'll find some delicious items in this Halloween bucket of airline candy. First, a haunted house full of earnings news. There was sweet and sour in the third quarter results for American, Southwest, and Alaska. Let's start with American. We've seen earnings results from the 5 biggest airlines so far. I'll just remind everyone, shouldn't need to, that the third quarter covers July, August, and September. That should be a pretty darn good season for airlines. Though August and September probably aren't what they used to be, summer's kind of ending early. But still, this is a strong period. And sure enough, Delta, United, Southwest, and Alaska all made money. One airline didn't, American. American posted a ghostly net loss of $114 million. Now, the losses actually weren't as bad as Wall Street was expecting, and American raised its outlook for fourth quarter profits and for the whole year. So some sweet news with the sour. The more significant news from American was that it hired Nat Pieper, the CEO of the One World Alliance and a recent guest on Airlines Confidential, to be its chief commercial officer. If you listen to the Airlines Confidential interview from the September 17th show, you know that American is putting a very experienced, very bright, very skilled leader in that position. And it is a crucial position. That's the spot from which Vasu Raja was fired after the disastrous moves made in the corporate travel world. American CEO Robert Isom says the airline is close to getting most of that corporate travel back, but Nat Pieper will have a lot of work to do still in rebuilding American's brand among corporate travelers and beyond. I think it's a tremendous hire. Pieper and Isom worked together way back at Northwest Airlines. Pieper has great experience at Delta and at Alaska, and his knowledge of and relationships with One World partners around the world will certainly help. American has had a big brain drain over the past several years, and this hire goes a long way to rebuilding top-notch senior leadership at American. Okay, back to earnings. Southwest made money, and that was a surprise to Wall Street analysts who had been predicting a loss this quarter for Southwest. So a $54 million profit is great news, right? Wrong. Southwest shares promptly dropped 9%. The treat came with a trick, at least in Wall Street eyes. Southwest revenue was a bit shy of expectations. The airline also warned that it was starting to see the effects of the government shutdown in ticket sales, not only reduced travel by government employees, but also now from people who do business with the government, like consultants. Southwest affirmed its earnings projection for the rest of the year, but Wall Street still seems skeptical about the airline's core business. Yes, bag fees and seat fees are bringing in lots of revenue, but is there a cost? Southwest told us for a long, long time that there would be a cost. Now are we seeing it? We'll ask Andrew Watterson very shortly here. I have to say, I don't see any major loss of demand in the third quarter revenue numbers. Yes, load factor was down a bit as it was at other airlines too. But Southwest yield, the average price paid per mile, was up more than 2%. Yield was down nearly 1% at Alaska, a full 1% at Delta, 2% at American, 4% at United. So has Southwest experienced a major loss in demand once bags no longer fly free? They're the only airline so far with a positive increase in yield. Those numbers tell you that overall, the net effect is positive. And then there's Alaska Airlines, where the ghouls and goblins have clearly been at work. Alaska produced its third quarter report just as it experienced another major technology glitch that forced the grounding of all flights Thursday evening into Friday morning last week. Hundreds of flights were canceled, and the airline had to postpone its earnings call with analysts and reporters. Alaska had an IT outage back in July, too, that forced grounding of flights, and by the way, cost them some in their third quarter results. It's unclear if this is related to the merger integration with Hawaiian Airlines. Alaska hasn't said yet exactly what the IT outage was. What is clear is that higher than expected costs are weighing on Alaska. The airline's fourth quarter profit fell well below analyst estimates because of higher costs. Part of the higher cost has to do with higher fuel prices on the West Coast because of tight refinery capacity there, but there's more to it. Remember, Alaska and Hawaiian now report together, and they didn't a year ago, so the changes, these numbers I'm going to cite, are big. But while operating revenue increased 23% when you put the two airlines together, operating costs increased 32%. Yes, fuel costs were up 22%, but wages and benefits were up 39%, and maintenance costs were up 70%. Putting two airlines together is expensive, and Alaska is probably looking at several years of work before it starts seeing cost benefits to the merger. So what did Wall Street think of all this? I follow stock prices because it certainly gives you a scorecard on winners and losers, at least in the financial end of the business. And we talk about Southwest Airlines share price frequently because the future of the company depends on it, at least who's in charge come next February, as Andrew Watterson and I will talk about shortly. Last week, American shares were up almost 16%. Despite the net loss, investors like what they heard from American about fourth quarter profits and about the Nat Pieper hire. Southwest closed the week down almost 5%. Despite the surprise profit, investors aren't convinced happy times are here again at Southwest. Alaska ended up down almost 9% in the middle of its IT outage. All in all, spooky stuff. What's not scary is the wonderful support Airlines Confidential and its listeners enjoy from our sponsors. We couldn't do this without them. So deep thanks to Ontario International Airport for its support. Faster is always better when it comes to traveling in and out of Southern California. That's why a growing number of travelers are choosing Ontario International Airport. With quick freeway access, easy parking, and shorter lines, J.D. Power surveys consistently rank Ontario the most popular mid-sized airport in California. Visit flyontario.com to learn more about ONT and how they boldly seize opportunity to connect the Inland Empire to the world. And thanks to Pratt & Whitney. At Pratt & Whitney, the pursuit of more sustainable aviation is foundational. For decades, Pratt & Whitney has been at the forefront of revolutionary advancements in aircraft propulsion technology. And by working smarter, cleaner, and greener today, they are committed to supporting the aviation industry in its goal of reaching net zero CO2 emissions by 2050. Learn more about Pratt & Whitney's smarter technology, cleaner fuel, and greener business at prattwhitney.com. Okay, let's get right to my conversation with Andrew Watterson. Andrew Watterson has been Chief Operating Officer of Southwest Airlines for the past 3 years. Previously, he was Chief Commercial Officer. He joined Southwest 12 years ago as Vice President of Network Planning and Performance. Before Southwest, Andrew was at Hawaiian Airlines, and before that, 12 years as a consultant to airlines at Oliver Wyman. He's, I think as listeners will remember, he's an Army veteran with a bachelor's degree from Washington University and an MBA from Vanderbilt. So welcome back, Andrew.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm pleased to be here, though the first time I was on, I really enjoyed it. The second time, it was actually a replay of our Ontario conversation.
Right. And
when I heard you announce me as a guest, I almost drove off the road because I was like, did I miss that? Oh my God.
we record you in your sleep, so you don't know. Well, welcome back the third time, and we are in person at Southwest headquarters, so all the better. First, you count airline years kind of like dog years, right? But last year, the last 12 months, seems like it should count for 12 years by itself in airline years. Just huge change. And not just all commercial change, huge change inside the company. It all kind of reminds me of a merger, though you aren't putting two airlines together, you're sort of turning one big company into a different big company. But there have been layoffs, there have been huge challenges with the operation, you're redoing every single one of your aircraft, all the different revenue initiatives, a lot of turnover, a lot of senior Gary people retiring and new leaders coming in. So first question is, how are you doing? How are the folks in this building doing? What's the mood over here these days?
The mood is really good. Certainly much better than, say, a year ago, let's say. And so we definitely had probably sometime between February and June was probably, people were not their happiest. And then from June onwards, we saw increasing engagement, frontline management. So right now, as we speak, people are, I think, in a really good spot, really happy, really enthusiastic about where we're going.
Yeah.
Which is nice because we have been in some version of a crisis since 2018. Sometimes I'm cynical and say 2014 was a good year, and there was all, stuff after that. But 2018 we had our first fatal accident, 1380. 2019 was a MAX grounding. 2020 COVID, kind of post-COVID turmoil, our operational disruption, activist investors. So there's been some version of a crisis for a while at Southwest Airlines. So to kind of see, good performance and all these changes have been accomplished is really invigorating for people.
Very good. Let's start with the big picture and then kind of drill down. When Elliott management came in and started pushing changes, I kind of griped Southwest was going to be just another airline, right? Nothing special anymore, at least nothing unique. And there was a lot unique about Southwest. But it seems that Southwest has really embraced that and said, if we're going to be just another airline, we're going to be a damn good airline. So is that the goal here? Is that the right way to look at this? Or how do you look at it?
Yeah, those are good points. I will say that we were known probably for the last 15-ish years for our unique policies.
Right.
And so there were policies we've had, but just other airlines decided to abandon them. And so when you're in marketing, you often want to accentuate your points of differences. So maybe we relied or emphasized those too much. Because before that time, the policies weren't necessarily unique, but we had unique service. Mm-hmm. And it served us well. We were considered a different airline, even though the policies were similar. So I think in these changes, we are rotating back towards unique services rather than unique policies. The difference, I think, is really one where you can't go from one day to the next. And so customers aren't stupid. If you say, we're a new airline like May 29th after changing all of our policies, they'll be like, no, that's nonsense.
Right.
So we do have a new positioning that we will be progressively unveiling early next year in the springtime. But between now and then, we had to change the narrative, which is why this summer, our marketing team called it the Summer of More. We came out, new destinations, new coffee, which we're drinking now, free Wi-Fi, which actually started today. And so lots of these types of things that change the narrative towards a positive. And we did see our brand NPS scores swoon after our announcement in March, hit bottom in June, and now we're back to where they were pre-announcement. So we have succeeded in shifting the narrative. I can read the social comments now without feeling shameful. But customers are enthused, employees are enthused. We're happy about it. And that kind of leaves a blank canvas for us to paint on early next year with a new positioning.
And what do you mean by new positioning? Marketing, slogans, what, or some other change?
It'll be a whole range of that. It'll cascade. The actual words we use internally may not match the words used externally, but it will be one that's focused on unique services. Unique service, like our employees have long been one of the kind of hallmarks of Southwest Airlines, especially when things go wrong. I'd love to hear about your wife, and she had a problem, and our employee at the baggage service office handled it very quickly and to your satisfaction. And I could tell by your voice you were very pleased with it. And so that is priceless. You can't make your employees do that. They do that because they want to do that. They believe in the mission. And so that will be more emphasized than it was, say, a couple of years ago. But it doesn't mean it's just about employees and just about the network. We still have to make sure that we take away any disadvantages we have vis-a-vis other airlines while building on our new portfolio of offerings.
So I want to talk about operational challenges, sort of macro and micro. With more gate-checked bags, right? That's an issue for everyone. But I'm curious how you've handled that, and if you feel like you got that under control, or there's still more work to do there. And then I want to talk about some of the more recent stuff: the government shutdown, air traffic control. What's ahead with all that? As we record, there's nobody seems close to a budget resolution, so we're going to assume that's continuing. But what about big picture operation? How's it going?
Well, big picture, I would say some of your co-hosts predicted doom, I tell you,
yes.
When we went to this new policies, and it doesn't seem to be the case now, does it? I will say we take an approach ever since we kind of rebuilt the operation of we must always be improving. So we keep that mantra. Justin and I share that, and Adam DeCare as well. And so we saw when we came out with bag fees, we did see about a 30% drop in check bags. Mm-hmm. We saw an increase in gate check bags, and we were still, top of the industry reliability. So we feel very comfortable about our comparative performance operationally. Now, we're never happy, so Justin and I and Tony Rocher think that we need to improve the employee and customer experience at the gate. I think you mentioned a lot of announcements and such. Yeah. And so originally the way we had set this up post go live was we wanted to take as many bags in the gate. You wait till it's in the cabin, it becomes a problem operationally, a problem for the flight attendants, a problem for our customers. So we wanted to try to get as many proactively before it got into the airplane. We succeeded in that, but it's a little bit too chaotic in the gate room for our likings. So we're rolling out changes to our procedures for our employees, some new technology to help target customers better that might be more apt and happy to check their bag at the gate. And we were also accelerating the retrofit of the space bins, the very largest bins in our aircraft. Right now, 20% of our aircraft have the space bins, and in those we have plenty of space. And so we want to get that all the 175-seaters retrofitted by post-summer next year. And so maintenance, which has done a great job on reconfiguring the seats, is now turning towards reconfiguring the overhead bins. And
you've done stuff. You got bag tag printers at the gates and all of that, right?
That is correct. Bag tag printers for our employees. We've shifted our staffing as well, so that you have less need at the ticket counter, but more need at the gate. And so we've been shifting around employee staffing as well.
And how about the more recent stuff? Government shutdown, air traffic control. Everybody seems to think it's going to get worse before it gets better. Has it been a problem yet?
Well, I'm poorly suited to tell you about if and when it gets solved. But as far as what it does to the airline business,
don't know.
There are people who get paid for that.
But they don't know either.
We do see a little bit of staffing triggers here and there. It's actually been pretty steady since the first week of October, the third week of October. Just talking about in our daily ops call, we don't see any kind of trend line of it getting worse, if you will. And so it just floats where you might see the staffing trigger. We do know, as we mentioned on our earnings call, that any shutdown of consequence, you start off with government travel being impacted, and then you see government adjacent, which is state and local, defense contractors, people who depend upon the federal government paying them. And then it switches to more general business travel and then leisure for the longest shutdown. So we saw last week for the very first time the kind of government adjacent took a step down, and not huge. It's more of a canary in the coal mine than actually any kind of dollar figure that's consequential. But so that's but you know this from past shutdowns. This is the sequence.
Right. Okay. You mentioned before giving back stuff. You took away a lot of things and giving back free Wi-Fi, coffee, things like that. Is there more coming? We've talked about lounges. You guys have. I mean, it's like the worst kept secret in the world. Love Field's, building a new head house terminal. They said they're going to build a lounge for an undisclosed airline. Who could it be? You had a survey out that said you're going to do lounges. You're going to do lounges when?
I think Bob's been fairly clear that we're investigating these things seriously. And so, you can make a case that we got behind on customer needs over the last couple of years, and we vowed not to do that again. You can also look at our kind of revenue performance, and we had a post-COVID, our kind of PRASM gap to our competitors, domestic PRASM, it widened, and now with the efforts we've done in the commercial side of the last year and a half, we've kind of closed the PRASM gap, it looks like, by fourth quarter. But the overall RASM gap itself, the other revenue line item is what's lagging. That other revenue line item performed well for us pre-COVID, but post-COVID, as you probably well know, credit cards are dominated by high fee cards that come with lounge access.
Yeah.
And that's what's really booming for banks and airlines alike. That has been a drag for us that we don't have that. We also, that customers, when we were younger, the people in the lounges were those flying first class. Now it's people with the credit card flying economy a lot. And so it's something we need to consider seriously. So yeah, it is a badly kept secret that we're looking at it, but we haven't announced anything because there's a level of irreversibility here, and they are expensive. So you don't want to go into this kind of with your anything except for your eyes wide open. Because when you're investigating it leaks out, we've just kind of been preemptive and say, yeah, we're looking at it. Doesn't mean we'll do it, but for all the reasons I just laid out, it's fairly compelling.
Well, and I imagine it's not just you. Chase is presumably involved in this too, right? Because they're the ones that would have the premium credit card, and they're in the lounge business too.
Well, they're in the lounge business. They have other airlines. They have other hotels and other co-brand cards. And so, yes, any kind of, the play here for other airlines is a high fee credit card with lounge access. So yes, you must talk to your bank.
Yes. All right. So third quarter, you mentioned the passenger revenue per ASM gap. You had positive PRASM this quarter, and American, Delta, United, Alaska all negative. So there's some good news there. There was lots of good news in this, but you kind of snatched disappointment from the jaws of excitement or something, right? You had a surprising profit when a loss was expected. Your yield was up 2%. That was better than American, United, Delta, and Alaska. But a bit shy of expectations on revenue and I guess on the fourth quarter projections. So what happened? Well, the stock went down 9% right after all this good news. How does that happen?
Well, I'm not on Wall Street, so you probably need to talk to someone on Wall Street to get it, like the real answer, so to speak. But for Andrew's point of view, I take it back to kind of think what Doug Parker said in your podcast a couple episodes ago. That reflects a future expectations, and since Doug and I went to the same business school, I agree with him. And so clearly, to Andrew's point of view, the Wall Street or the investors are not believing our projections, because indeed we had, I think, the fifth quarter in a row of positive PRASM, and the third quarter projecting a sixth quarter. Is not easy to kind of keep lapping yourself. Q4 of last year, we had robust RASM increases. So it's part of us kind of closing the gap, reverting to the mean, and then going above that mean is actually more difficult, and that's what we're projecting to do. And so we reaffirmed our profit guide, our EBIT guide,
right.
And that, if you do the math, that implies a margin that is much closer to the top of the industry than to the bottom of the industry. And then we said on top of that, next year we have $1 billion coming from seats and $1 billion for the following year. So all that stuff adds up to robust profits that one would think would be well appreciated, but clearly I must infer then that people don't yet believe it. So then it's up to us to show it. So the stress is on Bob and Andrew and Tom and Tony and Justin and the rest of the team to deliver that profitability, both in Q4 but also really Q1 when all the rest, everything is kind of in market and live.
The believability is interesting. Jamie Baker, who was on the podcast, sort of famously questioned you when your second quarter projection for the rest of the year of what you were going to earn. He said they're not going to get there, but with the third quarter, you affirmed that you were going to get there, and so, but you still have to have really good earnings in the fourth quarter to get there. And do you sense that the resistance is coming down maybe and people are starting to believe?
I guess not enough. We've seen the short interest drop in our stock, but we have underperformed for a couple of years now, so I can understand the pessimism. So I don't begrudge that, but the onus is on us then to perform, and we had that in front of us here in Q4 and Q1. So I will tell you that we were all focused and looking forward to proving our doubters wrong.
So it seems to me the really big question here is, the revenue initiatives seem to be working, right? You're collecting bag fees, you're collecting seat fees. Is that working? And I mean, what you've said is sort of according to projections, but the underlying question is, for years, Southwest said it would be a net loss, right? Because you would lose customers who would go elsewhere if they had to pay bag fees and all. Are you losing any? Is that part of the concern here, that there is loss of people who have just gone away, or is it truly a net positive?
That was our fear early on, and you saw in our Investor Day presentation in the fall of 24, we put a slide up there that showed that we thought it'd be a net negative. And that did come from, as I mentioned earlier, it was a point of difference that we accentuated a lot. But if you look at our kind of what I might call our value proposition to customers, it was really about flexibility. And a large portion of our customers pre-pandemic were business travelers, a third to 40%, depending on how you measure it. And they really valued the flexibility. They could move around. They didn't know where they were going to sit, but they knew they'd get a good seat because they were bored between A and B. We were all about flexibility, including our commercials, accentuate that.
Right.
Post-pandemic, we still have as many or more road warrior business travelers, but they travel less per person. And that ends up being more consequential than maybe see at first glance, because then who paid for that flexibility were business travelers. And so with less business travelers, we could not stretch our revenue to cover the increased costs we saw and everyone else did pre-pandemic. And so we had to go to a more segmented, pay more to get more value propositions, just like a lot of other airlines. And so we started on that path with assigned seating, but bags, we were fearful that because we'd staked so much on it, it would be a negative. Well, what some of our new board members, Elliott, other investors kind of pressed us on go faster. Your plan is a 3-year plan. That takes too long, given you've already been underperforming. And at the time, we'd also gone live in Google Flights, was another one of the things we did. And Google Flights had a bag indicator. It showed free check bags. Mm-hmm. We saw no benefit. We did not see our Google rankings. We didn't see our click-through rate change at all. Uh-huh. And that helped us get over our fear that we would lose a lot, because clearly it was not driving choice. So we needed to move faster. We needed the money. It could come from bag fees. We were seeing that it was not the choice discriminator that we feared it was, and that's what helped us get over it and change our mind, which we announced in March of this year.
And so bottom line, it is working.
I'm sorry, to get to your core of your question. So yes, with the bag fees that we talked about, it's about $1 billion a year run rate. And just as I described, our NPS scores going down then coming back up, we saw record qualifications for tier in the third quarter. We saw record credit card signups. We saw record Rapid Reward signups. So all of our customer metrics trended very, very positive in Q3. And so it shows that the customers are responding to the new value proposition, and our good customers are spending more, and we're getting more of those, quote, good customers who go down that funnel of engagement of FFP sign up and credit card. So all that points to the core base of our customers performing very well. Now, because you have this less trips per unique customer pre and post pandemic, you need a bigger customer base. So we are on a path through these third-party distribution channels and the free Wi-Fi that we by T-Mobile that we just started today. All that leads to us building a bigger customer base, which you need to support your flying, given that each customer individually is less productive on average.
And on this show, I'm talking to Jay Sorensen, who's out with his Ancillary Revenue Yearbook. And one of the things that fascinated me in that I'll talk about with Jay is customer willingness to pay for seat assignments, which has really sort of taken off worldwide. Are you seeing customers willing to pay for that? It strikes me that it's almost sort of a post-COVID phenomenon of people want the surety of what seat I'm going to be sitting in, and they're willing to pay for it now.
Yeah, those are actually really hard to get good benchmarks because bag fees end up getting reported through the DOT,
right.
But seat you don't see.
Right.
And maybe there was a period when it first started that felt like nickel and diming, but when we were doing our research, it clearly had become a case of people like, I want that seat, I will pay you for it, and I'm pissed if you don't sell it to me.
Right.
And so it really flipped, and so customers are really happy about being able to buy the seat they want, which is not necessarily what I expected. And as I mentioned on the earnings call, we see a knife edge switch in performance the day of assigned seats going live. So it's clear people are voting with their wallet that they prefer that method.
But that creates a bit of a problem with your elite level frequent flyers, right? Because like A-list people, they get seat assignments, 48 hours ahead of time for free?
Yeah, there's different tiers of what you get. A-list preferred, you can get ELR at booking.
Right.
A-list, preferred, you can upgrade later. And so the A-list are the ones that I think perhaps doesn't feel as rich. A-list preferred, we see good satisfactions with the new world.
Right, but if you don't get it right away, now the worry is, well, everybody's going to buy up all the good seats. I'm not going to have much choice.
Yeah, the kind of challenge for revenue management and our ancillary teams is high to be able to make sure you conserve enough seats, not just for last minute buyers, but the actual seat assignments for those who get it for free or those who want to buy it. So it is a challenge. We do have models that we've been training on early bird and upgraded boarding. So since we have not the same products but analogous type products, we've been using those to train our models to help get us up the learning curve, so we don't kind of go into it just blind.
So we've talked a little bit about Elliott Management and the role that they've played in all. As I was looking back on it, you guys came out with the standstill agreement with them. It was actually a year ago yesterday, October 23rd.
I missed that.
And that runs to Valentine's Day, right, of 2026. So you basically have until February to make them happy. As Doug pointed out, the stock hasn't moved much, and it had a kind of a run up before earnings, and then came back down. But $29 to $30 a share when Elliott was buying it up, and now $31, $32 a share. Obviously, not the return they want. Do you see a path to making them so happy that they leave you alone and you kind of become independent?
The stock has moved a lot, just not all in one direction.
Yeah, right.
And so we need it to move in one direction consistently, obviously. And it kind of goes back to our earlier discussion of what will make the stock move is investors believing in the profits that will come. So we need to show that, I guess, for them to believe that. And so the business plan we've laid out to others, the details we're seeing so far, the movement we've seen this year, we think is convincing enough, but investors will decide for themselves, and so clearly we need to show in Q4 and then Q1 that this sequential profit improvement indeed will come home, and then the stock should take care of itself in that regard. As to what will, Elliott has been, I think, a good forcing mechanism for us, bringing pressure along with other big investors. It wasn't just them to move faster. Southwest, one of our criticisms of us that was valid was we were very deliberate, slow. We should move with more pace. The external pressure, I think, was helpful in that regard, and they've been nothing but constructive since the standstill agreement was signed for moving forward. So I actually feel much more comfortable talking to Elliott than somebody who's kind of in and out of our stock as a hot stock. So it's I think it's been a constructive relationship, even if was a really rough and tumble courtship, let's call it.
Right.
But that's the activist world, and when you underperform, you open yourself up to activists. So fully understand that, and our job is to perform.
Right. But the risk is, come Valentine's Day, they can start shooting arrows again.
That's when you take one of these jobs, you must come with the expectation that I will be criticized, I could lose my job at any time, that you must perform. And so it's a fair assessment that if Andrew doesn't perform or the Southwest management team doesn't perform, that we would suffer the consequences. I fully understand that. But I think we have a good plan and good support from our shareholders to achieve it.
And employees too.
And the employees, the employees have really come behind this very strongly. I get a lot of enthusiasm. I do a monthly video kind of explaining what we're up to and what we're doing. I get good feedback from that. And just when I travel around the system, the employees are very eager for this and very supportive of this change.
Yeah. Okay. Anything coming up this fall? Or you mentioned first quarter next year, but what should we expect? More announcements, or is it kind of done for this year?
No, I think we've been hinting a bunch of different stuff, some of which we just talked about. And so the kind of, as we go down our path of what's next for Southwest Airlines, we've finished the implementation of the current transformation. Now we're hinting at things, the next phase, which are bigger stuff, which are kind of, frankly, more consequential, bigger decisions, if you will, than the ones we just took. The ones we just took were a departure from our previous kind of offering, but weren't necessarily big steps forward. The ones we've been talking about are big steps forward, and so we are focused on understanding what that next step is for Southwest Airlines. I think Bob has been talking about, sometime early next year, laying that out more clearly for everybody.
So big step forward, I mean, for the airline going to Europe or doing things like that?
Yeah, so
is that a big step, or is that an incremental, hey, we're going to add a couple flights here and see how it goes?
Well, what Bob has been talking about is, the lounges topic, more premium domestically, transoceanic service. These are things that our customers want. And, pre-pandemic, they may have been more nice to have. Post-pandemic, they clearly are something that customers demand. And if we were talking in 23, I may have been like, will this last? Who knows? We've seen this movie before, lots of these, but we're a number of years into it. And so customers, appear to really have changed. Sometimes when you say it's different this time, it really is different. And so when we open ourselves up in our strongholds for customers to split their wallet, literally give a credit card with 2 airlines, or if we can't give them what they want, we have a strategic weakness. And so we have to figure out, well, how do we address that strategic weakness that our customer base can be, poached, if you will, by somebody offering something we can't deliver.
All right. Well, good luck with it all, Andrew. It's been great talking to you, great catching up, and look forward to all that's ahead for Southwest.
Well, thank you very much, Scott, and please tell your co-host I was happy to prove them wrong.
Excellent. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Before we get to my conversation with Jay Sorensen, let me offer my thanks also to Infinity Flight for its sponsorship of Airlines Confidential. As a proud partner of the American Airlines Cadet Academy, Infinity Flight delivers high-quality pilot training designed to meet the exacting standards of today's commercial airlines. Infinity Flight is building the next generation of airline pilots, focused, prepared, and ready for the flight deck. Learn more at infinityflight.com. Infinity Flight, the trusted choice of aspiring aviation professionals and the world's largest airlines. And thanks, of course, to Cirium for its sponsorship as well. Cirium offers the most accurate and precise data and analytics to enable airlines to optimize planning, operations, and passenger services. The right intelligence drives operational efficiencies, enables you to predict market shifts, and helps airlines respond quickly to maximize revenue, manage costs, and seize commercial opportunity. Visit Cirium.com for more. Okay, let's talk money, consumer behavior, and airline strategy with the guru of ancillary revenue, Jay Sorensen. Over the past 25 years, Jay Sorensen's 200 reports and yearbooks have made him the leading authority on loyalty marketing and ancillary revenue in global travel. IdeaWorks reports and workshops are relied upon by airlines around the world. Jay has helped airlines boost revenue, design loyalty programs, and create co-branded credit card initiatives. And he has also kept airlines straight on what works and how much is too much from a consumer perspective. Jay's 41-year airline career includes 12 years at Midwest Airlines. Jay also leads the Kids First Fund and volunteers to restore ranger cabins in wilderness areas. So out of the wilderness, we have the pleasure of welcoming Jay back to Airlines Confidential to talk about his latest ancillary revenue yearbook. Welcome back, Jay.
I'm delighted to be here, Scott, and I would just love to sit back and just listen to you talk about me in such glowing terms for the rest of the time we're going to spend here today. Can we do that?
Well, no, I'm tapped out on that, my friend.
That was actually kind of short, so I guess I better fill in the gaps.
Okay. Well, listen, you've done an amazing job compiling all kinds of information about a side of the airline business, a very crucial side that doesn't get a lot of visibility and disclosure. Talk about how you capture data and compile it into this unique yearbook report.
Well, we've been doing this for 14 years, and it is a months-long process where we begin to look for every bit of revenue or ancillary revenue statistic data that we can capture from annual reports, from investor presentations, quarterly reports, executive interviews, wherever we can. We do this. We research about 150 airlines, and for some airlines, it's really easy to put it together. If you're a low-cost carrier and you're an investor held, typically they are very proud of their efforts, and they define ancillary revenue, and it's readily found with robust details. If you are a traditional airline in some place, perhaps outside the U.S., where reporting requirements for publicly held companies are less robust, it's going to be a lot of work for us to try to put together an ancillary revenue picture for these airlines. And so, at the top end of the scale, you're going to see airlines that are LCCs, and it's very easy to find the reporting for them. Towards as you work your way down the chart of the 61 airlines this year, it becomes more of a challenge to pull together numbers that define what each carrier is doing on an ancillary revenue basis.
Yeah, really interesting detective work, and the result is something that we don't see otherwise. So kudos to you for that.
Thank you.
With the 61 airlines worldwide this year, you say a shift is going on. Airlines are relying ever more on ancillary revenue. Ancillary revenue increased 2.5% in 2024, not a huge jump, but fares dropped 3.8% at the same time. So ancillary revenue is now 15% of total global airline revenue. What's the main driver of this shift?
Well, fares fluctuate far more than than a la carte fees do. And so you'll have fares going up and down, as determined by demand and supply. The pricing that's associated with a la carte activity is far more stable. And so there's less fluctuation there in terms of pricing, and actually demand for various products such as seat assignments and bags is very resilient. I mean, this became very clear during the pandemic when the a la carte portion or the ancillary revenue portion of the income statement for airlines was relatively stable. It's where we saw a lot of fluctuation was in fares. But overall, I think the three main drivers of ancillary revenue are bags, seat assignments, and branded fares. And branded fares are kind of like a bundled approach to ancillary revenue or a la carte pricing. So those three things are the big drivers. And those are the areas that we encourage our clients to concentrate on because they are probably going to represent 90 plus 95% of the total ancillary revenue picture for many airlines.
We see airlines like Delta earning big profits because its customers will pay up for premium, as you were talking about. But airlines like Spirit and Frontier that once were very profitable because of add-on fees, now they're struggling. What's changed? Why are add-on fees generating profits for some and not for others?
Well, I think that ancillary revenue is generating profits for everyone, for every airline. And what I find kind of amusing about this situation in terms of when we talk about premium travel, this is something that low-cost carriers kind of invented because you could go through the booking path and select things that were going to add more comfort and convenience to your trip. And that was something that, LCCs really mastered at the beginning. When we began this whole ancillary revenue journey, gosh, 20 years, we're going on 20 years now, probably. I think most airline executives believed that everyone wanted to buy the lowest fare. And what ancillary revenue has proven is that there's a big, meaningful portion of the marketplace where these consumers are willing to pay more for more comfort and convenience. And so I think that, obviously Delta is enjoying a tremendous amount of success in terms of premium travel. I mean, they do have more amenities that they can offer to consumers. I mean, when you're talking about a premium cabin, a business class cabin, or lounges, or even elite tier, all of this supports the luxury branding angle. I think that LCCs have an ability to capture much of this premium travel phenomena that's occurring right now, but it's going to take them more work. I see that some carriers are using LCCs are using the first class branding, and I think it's easier for a high quality brand to discount than it is for a low price brand to say they're going to offer a luxury product. That's not saying they can't do it. It's going to take more work. And so, I would, if we were to take this first class cabin idea that LCCs are talking about, I would liken it to, if Walmart came out with we're going to offer a high quality wine under the Walmart label, it would be the butt of jokes. There would be a tremendous amount of people who would make fun of that idea.
Right.
That's not saying that Walmart can't offer wine, but what they could do maybe is say, we're going to offer fun in a box, where you're saying we're going to offer this product, but we're going to market it differently. And I think that that's where I'm concerned with these LCCs talking about first class travel. I think, yes, if they pound away at that message long enough, they will eventually convince consumers that, yes, they have something that is better that they can offer. I guess I'm stuck in the branding of it. I would call it something else, and I would try to pull out unique elements that LCCs can provide, go back to their DNA, and find out what works in terms of exciting consumers.
Yeah, well, when Ben Baldanza introduced, a first class type seat, he just called it the big front seat, right? Which is exactly what it was. You weren't going to get a hot meal with that. You weren't going to get a hot towel to wipe up. You might get a bag of pretzels, but it was the big front seat.
There's a certain genius to that, and that's the direction that I am. That's the direction I'm suggesting, as opposed to just calling it first class.
Right. So the biggest annual increase in total ancillary revenue among the top 10 airlines was at EasyJet, which I thought was fascinating. EasyJet saw a 21.5% boost in ancillary revenue. EasyJet's not new to this game. What's happened there? They were one of the pioneers. To see a big jump in 1 year, something's changed.
EasyJet is an interesting carrier because, first off, they are among the most innovative carriers in terms of ancillary revenue. And so they are always trying things. But there was a period probably 10 years ago where they stopped reporting on ancillary revenue in their annual reports because they were tired of being beat up, at least that's what they perceived, by the UK media for this unfair, what the media called an unfair consumer practice. Well, in the more recent time, management at that company has learned that the investor community wants to hear about this. And so they have been reporting on this. So I think there's a underlying portion of EasyJet's better activity or increased ancillary revenue that's tied to just their innovation. But the big chunk is the recent very strong emphasis on vacation packaging. They want to become a carrier that is known for vacation packaging, especially in the UK. And I think that they're borrowing a page from the Jet2.com playbook. And Jet2.com is a low-cost carrier that I think probably does the best business of vacation packaging of any airline on the planet. Very, very dedicated to selling complete travel to their members, and really a small emphasis on non-package travel as an airline only seats at their website.
Interesting. Jet2.com is essentially what used to be seen as sort of a package charter carrier.
No, I'm not quite certain of their. That's suggesting that they're like a TUI. That they're not. No. They just have been doing this better. And the other interesting part about Jet2.com is they are so highly regarded by consumer organizations. They consistently get the highest marks from independent assessments of consumer quality and relations. So there's an example of an airline that is doing the right thing by consumers and making good money on it. I guess you could call Jet2.com the UK equivalent of Allegiant Air on steroids.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Let's shift to kind of a subset, frequent flyer revenue. We talk a lot about how the sales of miles or points to credit card companies has boosted airlines. And you calculated some fascinating numbers for how much airlines are getting per passenger from frequent flyer revenue. I assume this is spread across all passengers, right? Not just the ones
Correct.
on award tickets.
Correct.
So there's Delta, number one in total revenue, frequent flyer revenue, at $7.1 billion last year. And per passenger, it's $35.69, which seems like a lot to me for every passenger on Delta. That's a lot of frequent flyer revenue. How does that work?
So everyone knows about the fact that if you use a airline credit card, you're going to earn miles or points, and those are put into your account, and they're put into your account because the bank has purchased them from the airline. So that's the largest stream of revenue that's associated with these cards for airlines. But airlines don't give anything away for free. And so when you have a card that includes baggage, when you check a bag, the airline's going to be paid by the bank for carrying that bag for you. Now, that is very much a trade secret in terms of what that relationship is like. But undoubtedly, it's going to be, the bank will pay a discounted price for that bag. And I also believe that there's a cap in terms of how many times the airline will be able to charge the bank for a check bag. But the same is true for lounge access. When you access a lounge on a airline card, the bank is going to end up paying the airline for that lounge access. And even things like, for example, early boarding may incur a fee that's paid by the bank. So, there's that revenue. I mean, there's been certainly the topic of co-branding has had its moment in the sun this year in terms of business reporting. And there's always this narrative that annoys me that where people say, well, airlines can't exist without their frequent flyer programs or their co-brand credit cards. And to that I say poppycock, because if the co-branded credit card program were to disappear, the airline would have a lot more seats to sell directly to the public. And so, that would generate revenue on its own. It's not like if you carve away a frequent flyer program that suddenly the airline is going to fail. That's not the case at all. But, certainly in this regard, there has traditionally been discussed two distribution channels for airlines. The direct channel that has the airline selling tickets directly to the consumer via its website or mobile app. And then the indirect channel, which is online travel agencies such as Expedia or corporate booking paths for business travel accounts. I propose that frequent flyer programs or co-branded credit card programs have become a third distribution channel, a hybrid distribution channel, in which effectively a third party like a bank is paying for travel of the card for the card holders in terms of rewards. So it's not a shocking thing. I mean, you can't. A frequent flyer, a co-branded credit card program in an airline is like peanut butter and jelly. You just can't separate the two of them.
Yeah, and the third distribution channel idea, that's fascinating to me. It gives airlines a way, I guess, to unload some excess capacity, maybe, without having to lower published prices. It's sort of the consolidator thing. It also gives them a way to pre-sell tickets.
That's a very good analogy. So what we have seen some airlines do, and I think American does this probably more than any other carrier, is that, you will see discounted. The American will evaluate a flight, and if there's plenty of empty seats on it, they will push out those empty seats as discounted reward travel, where they don't touch the fare necessarily. So yes, you're right. It's like almost like a hidden discount. And so with some programs, I mean, of course, members are delighted when they see that. I mean, I've been, as a member myself, I've been very surprised in terms of checking on American for a close-in date. And it's like, wow, that's a 9,000 mile one-way reward, which was a very attractive price.
Yeah. All right. I mentioned my surprise at Delta at $35, almost $36 per passenger, but Southwest was number one per passenger frequent flyer revenue at more than $41 per passenger. Yep. Didn't expect that. Southwest is really pushing hard now on ancillary revenue, including revenue from its frequent flyer program. We know that it's working on lounges with Chase, its bank, for example, and with lounges will probably come a premium credit card. And so there are more revenue opportunities there. But this is last year. How did Southwest generate so much revenue per passenger from its frequent flyer program then?
So I think Southwest had they had a major program relaunch. I think we're probably going on 8 maybe years now, or 10 years. Wow. And when they did that, they really looked at the co-branded side of that of that offer. And I think that they have made a very powerful offer to consumers in terms of a frequent flyer reward value. And so that obviously lifts the numbers. They are on the Visa network platform, whereas Delta is on the American Express platform. So that means that when you're on Visa and you're working with a bank like Chase, you're just going to have more consumer acceptance in terms of you're going to have more with Visa. You're going to naturally have more locations that accept that card. But I think even when they're issuing credit, the qualifications, the cardholder qualifications are lower for a Visa card versus a American Express card. So they're naturally able to issue more cards. And I think there's also a numbers thing that's skewing the result that you talked about. And when you look at Southwest Airlines, primarily as a U.S. domestic airline, everyone who's a passenger probably is a candidate for their credit card because they probably live in the U.S. When you look at a carrier like Delta, there's a chunk of their passenger traffic that is international, that does not live in the U.S. And so I think that overstates the size of the passenger count relative to the credit card portfolio. So I think there's a little bit of a numbers thing that's happening there that gives an advantage to Southwest in terms of on a per passenger basis. It's probably not the best measurement of a portfolio, but of course we don't have the actual portfolio numbers, how many cardholders they have, so it's the best that I can come up with.
And the whole realm of rich rewards for credit card, rich travel rewards for credit cards, that's largely a U.S. thing because swipe fees are regulated in other parts of the world, and credit card companies can't offer you, 3% return back for every purchase.
Yes, I mean that's these cards are portfolios perform well for airlines in Australia, in Canada. and in certain locations in South America. But the U.S. certainly is a unique animal in that regard because the merchant fees for credit cards are not capped. They are capped for debit cards, but not for credit cards, and that's always a risk for this airline industry. It's a huge risk that at some point, if Congress were to say we're going to apply caps on merchant fees, like we have applied caps for debit cards, that would be potentially game over very quickly.
Yeah, yeah. You've got a collection in the yearbook of random facts found in your research. You call it interesting items in this report. What are a few of the more unusual entries there?
Well, there's fun stuff, that we find. Well, I guess fun in my twisted, warped sense of humor. But there's stuff that we come across. The report is essentially 40 pages of narrative at the beginning about ancillary revenue and trends and things like that, including this section that we're talking about now. And then there's 60 pages in the back in which for every airline in the report, there is a page just dedicated to that particular airline. And so we have 61 airlines in this year's report. But here's some fun facts that we pulled out. 60% of Americans' passengers are Advantage members, and they produce 66% of revenue. Less than 50% of Americans' passengers check bags. And among these, less than 50% pay to check a bag. So that would suggest that the remaining 50% enjoy no free privileges, either through their elite status or through a co-branded credit card. Kind of keeping on the credit card theme, this I always get a kick out of this. This has appeared in Delta's annual reports for about probably 4 years. Delta has a purchasing card with American Express for the purpose of buying jet fuel and crude oil. The card carries a maximum credit limit of $1.1 billion. As of December 31st, 2024, and it must be paid. The balance must be paid monthly. So if you have a complaint about your credit card having too large of a balance, you're certainly not Delta Airlines. But sticking on the Qantas, on again more credit card stuff here. The Qantas co-brand portfolio, with many banks, by the way, represents 35% of all consumer spending on credit cards in Australia. It's just an amazing statistic. I don't know if it's equal to the GNP, but a third of the transactions on credit cards in that country are tied to earning Qantas miles, which I find just absolutely stunning. I mean,
wow.
Good for them. I mean, they really have, and Qantas has had a tremendous revenue success with their loyalty program. AirAsia's website operates effectively as an online travel agency. The platform sells travel on AirAsia and 700 other airlines. This is a very different approach. Now, gross booking value for 2024 was about $2.4 billion. So gross booking value is the value of all travel that is transacted on that website. So that will include airline travel, hotel bookings, and car rental. And so that's a very they are unique in the world for that type of approach. And then finally, let's hop over to Europe and Wizz Air, which is a low-cost carrier in Europe. In October 2024, they announced an all-you-can-fly annual subscription and a multi-pass monthly subscription. The introductory price was €499, and members have an exclusive booking site where flights can be booked at a fixed price of €9.99. More than 10,000 members joined within the first 3 days of launch, and so that's obviously evidence of a very successful launch for what is a very pricey program. I mean, good for them. Kudos to them for putting a program like those. Subscription programs with a high price are not an easy thing for airlines to do because A, it has the consumer putting a bunch of money up front, and B, they have to have faith that the airline will actually deliver the goods. Yeah, and both of those things are difficult to do sometimes.
Fascinating. Okay. If people are more interested in the yearbook, where can they get it?
So this year we've changed the model. For 13 years, it was a free product. And this year we've changed the model. It was a sponsored product. And this year we've changed the model where it's sold for $650 at the IdeaWorksCompany.com, IdeaWorks Company, all spelled out, .com website, and look under the store front for the 2025 Yearbook of Ancillary Revenue by IdeaWorks.
All right. Jay Sorensen, thank you so much. Always fascinating data. I think really relevant this year, and really appreciate all the digging you do to find this and all the analysis you bring to a really important side of the airline industry. I really appreciate your work. Thank you.
Delighted to be on the best podcast on planet Earth.
Well, I'll tell Travis Kelce you'll be over. All right. And we will be right back with more on the best podcasts on planet Earth after a brief message.
Promotional support provided by the Ultimate AvGeek website, thearchive.net. A vast collection of airline memorabilia, timetables, route maps, rare cabin and airport photos, special flights, and more. All at thearchive.net, the hub of air transport history.
My deep thanks again to Jay and to Andrew. I hope you enjoyed these important conversations as much as I did. Let me add one mailbag item, a lovely note from Bob in Storrington, England. Bob said, just a note of thanks for a great podcast, often co-hosted by a couple of my CO US bosses. Really insightful, always interesting and thorough. Bob adds, much enjoyed the latest US ULCC episode and the interesting comparisons with the key players in Europe, as well as the Star Alliance chat with Theo Panagiotulius. He made herding the often highly competitive cats sound quite easy. Keep up the great work, and thanks again. Well, thanks to you, Bob, for that wonderful note, and thanks to all the listeners. This has been so much fun for us, and one reason is that the audience keeps growing, and people really do seem to appreciate it, and that means the world to all of us involved in putting together this podcast. Well, that's all for another edition of Airlines Confidential. I'll be back next week with co-host Henry Harteveld and what we think will be a fascinating conversation with one of the major players in the AI world of airline tools, a really important dive into AI. So until then, happy Halloween, everyone. Have a great week.
This podcast is produced by Mass Media. Info@massmedia.net.